Good song, too. Well, we're continuing on. I am almost to the point where I think I'm done with the prophet Jeremiah, but we'll see. I get in and study a little bit more. We're not far from where we were last time, looking at Jeremiah chapter 3, and in particular verse 24. And if my title is, I Hope in Him. Now, it's not like the world hopes. You have to understand that scriptures have a different definition for a lot of words. People, for instance, use the word church in a way that's not biblical. You know, we're going to church today. No, you are the church, not you're going. Look at that church over there. No, that's a building where the church worships. That's not the church. Hope is sometimes a word that people, well, I hope it doesn't rain today. Well, we could just as easily put the word wish in there. That's not the word that the Bible gives us, the word hope. In the Greek, and of course I know we're in the Old Testament, but it gives it really clearly in the Greek. Hope is a confident expectation, a deferred realization. I know it's going to happen, just not now. A confident expectation. I know it's going to happen. I hope in Him. This particular verse in Lamentations 3 and 24, it says, the Lord is my portion. We'll spend a lot of time there, right there. Because that saith my soul, the Lord is my portion, saith my soul, therefore will I hope in Him. Now, if you don't understand that first part, you won't get the benefits of the second part. You need to have the Lord as your portion. The word portion here, I mean, it's like you think about that big bowl of stew that's sitting on the table, and I want a portion. Close. This word really refers to an inheritance. My inheritance, or my heritage, my birthright. Jeremiah was not speaking about his earthly heritage or his family inheritance. He said, the Lord is my inheritance. The Lord is the one that I will enjoy forever. It is not the palace of jewels on a street of gold, but Him. That will be my, you know you're going to have a mansion in glory, don't you? But that's not going to be your thrill. That's not going to be your joy. My portion, my inheritance, my birth is to be with Jesus Christ. He will ever be my delight. He will ever be my interest. That's why you look at that whole verse together. This I recall to my mind. Therefore, I have hope. Whenever it gets bad in your life, whenever you get down, depressed, whenever something's not right, remember where Jeremiah was and where he is, and we'll show you a little bit more. He says, but now I recall this to mind. Therefore, I have hope. What is it I recall to mind? It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed. Everybody else is dying. Everybody else is dead. Not just taken captive. They've been killed with the sword. They've died from malnutrition, no water, no food. We, he says, are not consumed. Why not? Because His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. That's where we stayed and sang that song both before and after. The Lord is my portion, he says, saith my soul. Therefore, I will hope in Him. Now remember, this is a song. It is a song to be sung in times of deep despair, a time of hardship and suffering, a time of poverty, again, when we feel like we're at the bottom or even close to it, we need to remember, like Jeremiah does, remember, you're not dead. There's hope that's going to rise up new every morning. There's new mercies. Now, you do kind of need to go back a little bit further into this chapter and notice what was being said by this man who was first full of complaints. He was full of complaints. Jeremiah struggled with his experience in the flesh and with his spiritual position and relationship with God. Read with me Jeremiah, or Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. He says, I am a man that hath seen affliction, not just general affliction, but by the rod of his wrath. This was God that was doing what he was doing in his city, to his people. I am the man that hath seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. He hath led me and brought me into darkness, but not into light. Surely against me he is turned. He turneth his hand against me all the day. He goes on and he talks about how that he felt like his prayers had been shut out. He says that everything seems like it tastes like gall and wormwood. You couldn't give me anything to eat that would taste good. He said that God was like a bear and a lion coming after him and pulling him into pieces. He even said in Lamentations 3 and 16, he says, he hath also broken my teeth with gravel stones and hath covered me with ashes. Wow. He even goes on to say his hope is perished. I've lost all hope. I've gotten there. But then I remembered, like Jeremiah. Then I remembered. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore will I hope in him. Remembering that the Lord is your portion drives away depression, despair, despondency, distress, and disappointment. Jeremiah complained and then he remembered. Now, he is teaching us the way of deliverance out of that bottomless pit. You realize some people get in such a state of hopelessness and despair, they don't ever recover. People can lose their minds. They can take their lives because they are hopeless. But he is giving us the way out. He remembered. This is the way of deliverance. He's revealing his own personal struggle. All of those verses that I showed you, he even felt like he was eating gravel, breaking his teeth apart, being covered in ashes. Mourning is all that he could do. Let me tell you a little bit of Spurgeon. I just love Spurgeon. You might recognize that, but I do. But in preaching on this particular passage, he preached a message entitled Choice Portions. Now, I'm not going to get into all of it because you can imagine the choice portion is the Lord. But in his second point, he deals with the Lord is my portion. And he went on to say in this that he is his only portion. He is my sole portion. In other words, he is not a part of my portions. He is not in my portions, but he is my portion, my only portion. And I'm going to ask you this. If the Lord is your portion, when you feel like you don't have anything, you look around like Asaph did, and you become jealous of what other people have. The Lord is my portion. Now, what more could you want? The Lord owns it all, doesn't he? He went on to write this. He says, come, brethren, have you got a grip of this portion? He's talking to his own church. Are you sure it is yours? He says, pray for sinners that God may bring them in, But see first of all to your own personal interest in this precious thing. Let it go round these pews now. Can you say, the Lord is my portion? Let it not be a general declaration, but a particular affirmation. The Lord is my portion. Yes, with streaming eyes and bursting heart. Many a soul here that can now see Jesus hanging on the cross, taken away all its guilt, can say, though almost choked with tears, yes, blessed be his name. The Lord is my portion. He goes on to say this, my inheritance lies in heaven's unmeasured space. In other words, he is an all-sufficient portion. He satisfies everything. There are times we've gotten done eating. Meal was great. Pat did an awesome job. Just as pleasant as could be. And it isn't 15, 20 minutes later, I'm walking through the kitchen looking for something else. I'm satisfied. Why am I looking for something if I was satisfied? Folks, if the Lord is your satisfaction, why are you looking for anything else? It's the flesh a lot of times that stirs that up. I will challenge you the same way that he did in that message, which makes and says, will you make to him that your choice? The Lord is my choice, and therefore I choose him as my portion. Now, I know that he chose us before we ever chose him. I know that he loved me before I ever loved him, but still, on a daily basis, you need to make the Lord your choice, your portion. Let me ask you this. Would you choose unlimited in your imagination? Because I can't even imagine how it is to live like some people do. They were showing some of the houses down there on Malibu where some of the storm has come in and caused problems. And I saw one house and I thought, that's got to be a hotel. It wasn't. I thought it was a hotel. I've seen houses that look like a hotel. I can't imagine. And my wife wouldn't want to live there because she'd be busy cleaning all the time unless you got her a maid, huh? Because she's a clean freak. But you need to hire a maid. That's too big to care for. That's too much. I cannot even imagine the opulent riches that some people have. I cannot imagine the riches that Moses enjoyed growing up. He grew up in Pharaoh's house. But do you remember what happened? We see it in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 24, 25, and 26. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God. Why? Than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, because they don't last. Why? Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. For he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. What's your choice? The Lord is my portion. What greater portion could you have than God? What greater hope could you have than in God? And what greater peace could you have than this portion will bring you? You know, if I had a mountain of cash in my house, I mean, I had a room full of it, stuffed full with $100 bills. I see these old shows where sometimes they'll put out a $500 bill and a $1,000 bill. They used to have those, if you don't know that. They quit distributing those. But wouldn't that be nice? A room full of $1,000 bills? Any bill come up? I'm not worried about it. No, listen, the Lord is your portion. What greater portion can you have than God? What greater hope can you have than that in God? And what greater peace can you have that God can bring? Spurgeon also spoke of that choice being a settled one. Many of you made a choice in a spouse. It was settled. That was your choice. Now, I know people have Said, well, not anymore. But many of us made a choice of a spouse, a life partner. It was a settled choice. I fooled Pat, and she made a choice. She chose me. She keeps choosing me. Almost 50 years. At the ripe age of 20, those two little ignorant fools made a choice. But we couldn't be happier. But you know why? Because both of us have made the Lord our portion. We made the Lord our choice. He is the one who fulfills our longings. He is the one that fulfills our desires. Oh, our flesh may want more. Our flesh may want something else. But again, with all of that, what it said, the Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore will I hope in him. Do you realize that you are a kingdom of priests? Peter, that's exactly what he calls us. Kings and priests. Now, you think about the priest in the Old Testament. Everybody was getting their portion. All the tribes were getting their land. Oh, man, look at that. They get that big old area. What's our tribe going to get? What's our tribe going to get? Oh, and then all of a sudden, we come to the priests, the Aaronic priesthood, and Aaron himself, in Numbers 18 and 20. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, thou shalt have no inheritance in their land. Oh, what? Neither shalt thou have any part among them. I am thy part and thine inheritance among the children. Would you be disappointed? God would be their portion. In fact, I'm going to tell you, this is the difference between choice and prime. You know there's a difference between the meat classification, choice, and prime. Prime is much better. That's what we're talking about here. When they gathered near the Jordan River by Jericho, Moses again gave every tribe their inheritance. But in Joshua 13:33 it says, but unto the tribe of Levi, the priest, Moses gave not any inheritance. The Lord of Israel was their inheritance, as he said unto them. They were not a deprived tribe. They were an appointed tribe given Jehovah as their inheritance. No matter what you might enjoy or not enjoy in this life, you have the greatest portion. You have God as your portion. You have Jehovah as your portion. And he owns it all. I do not have the riches that the wicked have seemed so bent on to grab or have more of. Even when you look at that psalm in Psalm 73 of Asaph and how he became envious of the foolish when he saw the prosperity of the wicked. He said, I don't have the riches of the wicked. But then he went into the sanctuary, he said. He began to worship God. And he realized those people don't have God. You ever see people, listen, they may be very, very religious people. A lot from the Middle East, I see it because of the news, when they have a family member die, and you can see them wailing, screaming, hollering. So sad. And I mean, it is terrible when we lose someone. But we grieve, but we do not grieve as others who have no hope. The Lord is our inheritance. Psalm 73 and 26 says, my flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Don't depend upon your flesh, dear friend. It will fail you. Don't depend upon the goods or riches of this world. They will not satisfy and they will fail you. They will, like we found out Sunday night, just blow away. It's very easy for all of our earthly riches to blow away. God will never fail you. God will always and forever be your strength and your joy. Again, if we find ourselves overwhelmed with distress, remember that God is your strength and your portion. We probably have not even really thought about that word too much, except maybe when we sit down to dinner and we're dividing it up among our family member, and somebody might get the choicest portion. That's for Dad. Or that's for Mom. Or that's for Grandma. Or we have a guest. And get your hands off that. We're going to give that piece, the choicest portion, to our guest. That's happened, hasn't it? But the Lord is my portion, therefore I have hope. Jeremiah was captive, his city destroyed, his people taken captive and killed. He was bitter, he was angry, until he remembered God's mercies are great. That was his hope. Even if we must lose all that we have in this world, we have lost nothing. Because we can't lose him. Every portion of this planet, every piece of gold, silver, land, or jewelry, everything and anything that you might mention that is an earthly inheritance will one day be burned with fire. Now, rightly, I can try to leave something for my family, to leave some provisions to better their life, but the greatest inheritance that I can leave my family is the Lord. That's the greatest inheritance. My hope in this life is the Lord. He is my hope in this life. He is my hope beyond this life. I have God as my inheritance, and that can never be taken away. It can never be diminished, and no robber can ever come in and steal it. His compassions fail not, they are new every morning. Again, Aaron the high priest heard the same words. In Numbers 18 and 20, and the Lord spake unto Aaron, thou shalt have no inheritance. Folks, your inheritance is not in this world. This world one day, what do we even sing it? This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. I've got another home. And when we do come back to earth, because I'm not going to live in heaven forever, we are going to come back to this planet, but guess what? This planet's going to be altogether different. It's going to be burned with fire, and he's going to make a new heaven and a new earth. God is a part of our inheritance. No, he is our inheritance. That hope will never be frustrated, and that hope should never be frustrating. Our portion, spoken of in Scripture, is our Savior who suffered all and even death for us. Think about it. Jesus Christ, who owned it all, never had a place to lay his head and call his own. You think about it. He never had a bank account. He never had a wallet full of money. In fact, when he needed money, he just went up to the lake and told him to grab a fish. He's got all you need to pay the taxes right there. He was at one time offered all the kingdoms of this world by Satan himself, but he turned that offer down. Why? Because God was his portion. Jeremiah was encouraging himself in the Lord. All was lost, and yet he had really lost nothing. Why? Because the Lord was his portion. The Lord is my inheritance. God is mine, and I am his. He will give us what we need during our journey through this life. He will supply our needs. But listen, my needs can be minimal because the Lord is my portion. Others may have their land and gold, but my portion is the Lord. The nation of Israel was never a world power. Not at all. They did not have the riches of many of the other nations, nor did they have the armies of the other nations. But notice Psalm 33 and 12, blessed is the nations whose God is the Lord. And notice that last part, and the people whom he hath chosen for his inheritance. Do you realize we are God's inheritance? He chose us. What more could they need? What more could we need? Jeremiah said having the Lord as his portion had an effect upon him. It gave him hope. It gave him a confident expectation. It gave him a deferred realization. He looked forward. He didn't look backward on what he had and what was lost. He didn't even look at the present where his horrible captivity was there. He looked forward, knowing the promise of the Lord would not fail him. God cannot fail him. He is my portion, therefore I hope in him. I will overcome whatever I have to face because the Lord is my portion. In fact, Jesus told his disciples in John 16:33, he says, these things have I spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world, you're going to have tribulation. But be of good cheer. Why? Because I have overcome the world. Now, if you remember this fact, or really this formula for peace, you will enjoy a lasting, eternal peace. But if you don't remember it, you don't think about it, you won't have that lasting peace. When the Lord is our portion, we look ahead. I don't look backwards. I don't even look at the present, because all of that can disappear. When the Lord, again, notice that verse, these things have I spoken unto you. What things had he spoken to them? Well, I'll give you one verse, in verse 20. I'm not going to put it up there. But he says, your sorrow will turn into joy. They were going to have sorrow. In fact, he said it very clearly in verse 22. That other verse I just mentioned was verse 20. But in verse 22, he says, ye now therefore have sorrow, but I will see you again. Jesus is coming again, folks. And your heart shall rejoice, and your joy no man taketh from you. No man can steal that joy from us. No one can. The Lord is my portion. Now, until that day that he comes back, there is a battle going on. There is a battle between the forces of God and the forces of the wicked one. John called it the spirit of Antichrist. But he also said, you are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. The Lord is my portion, therefore I will hope in him. Jeremiah had already had the evidence he needed. He was still alive. In fact, that's all the evidence he needed. It's all the evidence you need right now. God is merciful. God is faithful. His mercies are renewed every morning. We are a needy people, and it's a good thing they're renewed every morning. Because aren't you needy the very next day? You will be needy tomorrow. But that's okay, because he's provided those. One writer penned his thoughts about this verse. He said, the hope of the prophet began to dawn amidst the deepest gloom. You hear that? The prophet, the hope of the prophet began to dawn amidst the deepest gloom. When it was the darkness, all of a sudden, the seed of hope sprung up. If that's the case, then I'm going to end this with this verse. My hope is in the Lord, right? You know what's going to happen when you get a little down, when you get a little bothered, when you're uncertain and unsettled. Paul gave a formula of protection. In Philippians chapter 4 and 8, he says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, God is my portion. Whatsoever things are honest, God is my portion. Whatsoever things are just, God is my portion. Whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, and if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Get your mind off of the junk and the bad, and remember the plan and the purpose God has for your life. That's how you get out of the mullygrubs. That's how you get out of the state of despair and distress, discontent. Jeremiah's word fit the description of what we ought to think on. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Remember that. Sit down with Jeremiah. Remember where he's been. He said, man, the Lord is after me. He's knocking me on one side and knocking me on the other side. He's given me nothing but gravel that's broken my teeth. He's covered me with ashes. Oh, wait. I remember. The Lord is my portion. His mercies are new every morning. Therefore, I will hope in him. Father, no matter what despair takes place, we may encounter. Did anyone here? It may not be today, it may be next week, next month, next year. But Lord, we're all going to encounter days of despair. But Lord, help us to be like Jeremiah and remember that you are our portion. Therefore, I will have hope.